while I was there, an American magician, I wish I knew who he was. I don't know who this guy was. And he came in and was chatting to Alan, and he got chatting to me. Maybe I would have been about 21, 22 then. And he said, have you ever been to Davenport's? I said, no, what's that? He said, oh, it's another magic shop. And I went, wow, London's got another magic shop. He said, yeah. He said, it's down by Charing Cross Tube Station. He said, I'm going there now. Do you want to come? I said, yeah, all right. So we got on a tube together. This guy, I wish I knew his name. I'd love to have been able to get back in touch with him. And we went to Davenport. So we went in and he started getting the guy. It was this Scottish guy. I think he might be called Fergus, who used to work there. And he sort of said to him, oh, have you got the first copy of the Jinx magazine? And he went, yeah. And he went and got it. He said, you should get this. There's a great trick in there called Dr. Jack's Four Blacks. He said, you love it. He said, you should get that. I went, all right. I'm thinking I'm a student. I can't afford to buy all this stuff. And then he said, oh, show him Rainbow Cascade. And I went, wow, that's great. He said, you should get that. And I remember Fergus sort of saying, well, it's got a few moves in it. It's not easy. And he could tell that I wasn't really a magician. And this American guy said, no, he showed me some stuff at Alan and Alan's Magic Spot. He can do it. He'll be able to work it out. And there was about 7 or 8 items that he sort of said, you should get this. And then I went, oh, great, I'll have all of that. I went to pay. He said, no, I'm getting them all for you. And this guy bought Rainbow Cascade for me. He bought the first issue of Jinx, and he paid for it all. And I said, thanks very much. I thought, I'm going to have to sleep with him now. Something's going on.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Desert Island Tricks. We have a guest who I am incredibly excited to talk to. This gentleman is someone who I have watched growing up through my career, and I've watched all of his DVDs. I've owned many of his products, and the interesting thing is I know that a lot of you listening will be in the same boat. And even one of his tricks, Soundbox, I've been trying to get the props for a couple of months because I think it's a phenomenal trick. Now, you would have seen him as the first Fooler on Penn and Teller Foolers, which was, well, it feels like an age ago now because there's so many series of them. But his routine was so funny, so well put together. I think it really captured magicians and public's imaginations. And no wonder it's now a staple in so many people's repertoires. So I'm very, very excited to speak to this man. I don't really need to give him any more of an introduction than that because he is who he is. It is Mr. John Archer. Hello, John.
Hey. Great to be here, Jamie. Thanks for having me. I've got a soft spot for Peter Nardi and Alakazam magic. It's a little swamp near Leeds, actually. But no, I've genuinely got a soft spot because Peter Nardi really launched me to the magic world. He sort of, nobody knew who I was. And he said, do you want to do a DVD? And I thought, I might as well. And I did that first DVD, Educating Archer. And all of a sudden, I was getting asked to appear here, there, and everywhere, and magic conventions around the world and all sorts of stuff. So it's all his fault. If anybody hates me, blame Peter Nardi, not me.
Well, those DVDs were phenomenal. Educating Archer and Further Education, as well as Collared, which was just a wonderful routine as well. Those are still so much fun to watch, and I urge anyone who hasn't seen those DVDs, if you're new into the industry, if you've just not seen them before, please seek them out because they are phenomenally funny.
Yeah, I did enjoy doing them as well. It just sort of, it was back in the day when it was all a bit more low key the way they were recording it. Just, but yeah, it was great fun. And the good thing about it was because I'd never done any DVDs before. I had like all of my working repertoire to pick from. So and because everything I try and do original or put my own spin on it, it meant I had quite a lot of stuff to put out. So those first 2 DVDs are, they're full of full of gold, if I may say so myself, without sounding too immodest. But yeah, there's some good stuff on there, and stuff I still do today. But most of the stuff on there I still do. I would think a good 70-80% of it I'm still regularly performing.
The thing that we found to be the most beneficial from those DVDs wasn't actually the tricks. It was watching your performance and seeing how quick you were to adapt to situations and the lines that you used, some of the jokes that you used. It was more your performance, I think. I mean, the tricks are phenomenal, don't get me wrong, but watching you perform, it's a masterclass in comedy, performance, and owning the stage, and even routining tricks so that they make sense and, you get the byplay around them.
Yeah. I think watching any performer who you like and you admire, that the secret is to sort of try and learn from what they're doing and then make it your own and not try and copy them, which some people do.
Now, with such a massive, you mentioned your absolute, I'm guessing, sea of material at this point. How difficult was it putting your list together with all of the material that you have and all of the tricks that you enjoy?
Well, it wasn't difficult putting my list together because more than half of the tricks are tricks that I've never performed and I never will perform. But if I was on a desert island, I'd love to be able to perform. And I'll explain that a bit later. And I listen to this podcast a lot, and I've listened a lot, and a lot of people talk, use tricks that they do in their show and talk about that. And I do like a lot of my tricks, but really, the tricks I like the most are tricks that I would never perform, and I'll explain why when we get to them. But yeah, so I didn't find it too difficult, really. There was some obvious ones for me that were easy to put in. And then, just sort of a little bit of thinking. I thought that the problem is not trying to think of eight. It's trying to think of all the ones. It's trying to eliminate all the ones that you'd love to put in that you can't. It's not that eight's a difficult number. It's a limiting number because there's loads and loads of great effects out there. There's no shortage of great effects. It's great presentations that are harder to find, great routines that, making those great effects your own. That's more difficult, I think.
Well, anyone who's playing John Archer bingo at this point, he may have just automatically ticked off some of the ones that you had on your list by accident. So it's going to be interesting.
You know what? I reckon on my list, there is only one trick that people will be able to possibly guess. The rest, they wouldn't associate with me at all, I don't think.
Wow. For me, it would, if I was to guess that one, and no confirmations, it would have to be blank.
Straight face, because you can see me.
I can see John.
You can see me straight face. Watch, look, this is my straight face.
It's a very good straight face.
Yeah, it's resting club face, that.
I think it's blank night. It has to be blank night. He's given nothing away. Great. Good job. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, the idea is we're about to whisk John away to his very own desert island. When he's there, he's allowed to take 8 tricks. He's allowed to banish one thing, take 1 book and 1 non-magic item that he uses for magic. I'm still getting used to saying the banishment bit. Particulars, things like who's there, what's there, all of that good stuff, we do not mind. It's in John's own imagination. This is basically the list of tricks that he could not live without. So with that being said, let's find out what's in spot number 1. What did you put in spot number 1, John?
Spot number 1, I've got a couple of things from my close-up days in years gone by. I haven't done a close-up gig for, I would guess, 15 to 20 years now. A proper, a paid strolling, table hopping type close-up gig. But I used to do it a lot. I used to do a lot of kids shows. I used to do a lot of close-up shows. Kids shows were the first thing that went, and then close-up went after that. Basically, just so I can concentrate more on what I really want to do, which is stand-up and cabaret. But one of my go-to close-up tricks was Crazy Man's handcuffs. What I love about it is it's very, very recognizable non-magic props, two rubber bands. I say rubber bands for the American listeners, elastic bands for the British listeners, but Americans get confused with that phrase. But yeah, just two rubber bands. It's, it can be repeated. You can do it several times. I used to do it 3 times, just strengthening the phase each time. Well, not really strengthening it, but just letting them observe slightly more each time. Third time, I would do it on their fingers. And the effect is very simply 2 rubber bands that are behind each other end up melting through each other and not being behind each other anymore, held on your fingers. A lot of people, it's been attributed to Dan Harlan, Herb Zarraud, Michael Amar, but it was actually Arthur Setterington from Hull who came up with it originally. And not a lot of people know that. And Arthur Setterington was a lovely, I say a lovely old man because I only knew him when he was old. He was probably a lovely young man, but a really creative guy from Hull Magic Club originally came up with it. And then it's sort of, other people, I think Herb Zarraud might have been the first one who took it on, and then Michael Amar and Dan Harlan. But just a great effect. And, I used to just have some rubber bands around my wrist and you can go straight into it. It was the one thing that, everyday carry didn't exist when I was doing it, that phrase. But that was one thing that was part of my everyday carry. It was a few elastic bands, normally either around my wrist. That used to look a bit odd. Or it would be, they'd just be wrapped around the card box. I'd have a deck of cards, some rubber bands around them, and maybe a packet trick, which we might talk about later. And that was it really. I had 3 or 4 tricks in my pocket. I don't tend to do that now because I don't really perform informally unless my wife nags me to. But I tend not to take magic out with me unless, like I say, I'm cajoled into it.
And in terms of, obviously, we're not going to talk methods, but in terms of the version that you do, have you always just done the original? Because obviously, in years gone by, there are different moves and different advancements. Of course, we had Crazy Sam's handcuffs, which came out a couple of years ago, which lots of people enjoyed as a different take on it. But have you always done the traditional version?
I have always done the additional version. I did get Crazy Sam's version, which is lovely. it's very cleverly deceptive, and when you realise what's going on, you go, "Wow, I can't believe it looks so real," And I've played around with that, but the truth is, I'm a bit of a lover of simplicity. I like simplicity in effect, and I like simplicity in plot, and simplicity in presentation, really. Often I don't want to start throwing in other variations. I'm not really a big fan of kickers, in mentalism. I'm not. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just me. This is just how I am. It's not. I don't think it's wrong. It's just. For me, I'm not a big fan of here's the reveal and now look, it's also written on the back of my shoe. And if you look at the back of the theatre, there's a video of me, walking down that street 8 weeks ago. And, if you all go out, it's great for some people. But for me, I just quite like, here's the setup, there's the reveal. Thank you very much. Let's move on. And it's the same with close-up routines, really. I just like a nice simple plot that people could describe in a sentence, which is why I've really just stuck to that. It's the same method, and I do it 3 ways. I have other rubber band effects that I will sometimes do before it. Band jumping from 2 fingers to another 2 fingers. And I also might do the snapping band and restoring it effect. But really, if I do the Crazy Man's handcuffs, which I think was Dan Harlan that named it that, was it? Oh, Michael Lamar? One of them named it Crazy Man's handcuffs. I don't think it was Arthur that named it that. But if I do that effect, then it is just the basic show them behind and bring them out, and then repeating it twice. I finished with the spectator holding it on their 2 fingers. That's the 3rd phase. But pretty straightforward, really.
Well, it's a great opening gambit. And again, like you said, it's not one that I would have predicted for you, which is really interesting. And you've also just teased, accidentally, a future one by saying a packet trick that we might speak about later. So what did you put in position number 2?
Well, it's not that much later because we're going to speak about it now. It's my packet trick. I've experimented and played with lots and lots of packet tricks. One that I used to do, this isn't the one, but I used to like the drink trick. Was it Eddie Gibson? I'm trying to remember the name. It wasn't Eddie Gibson. Who was it who did the drink trick? Which I saw Paul Daniels do. You know, it was the one where you're basically just doing a buckle count constantly and showing, telling a story about playing a game of cards in a pub, and the cards change to aces, and then the backs change, and then you say, why do you do that? And then the backs change again, and then the backs change again, and it's the amount of changes in it are phenomenal. But I was in and out with that one. But my packet trick of choice, and again, it was one that was a staple for me when I was doing close-up, is Roy Walton's Rainbow Cascade. And what I like about it is it hammers home a belief in the viewer, the audience. It's a twist in the aces type plot, really. You have 4 cards that are the same. You show 4 cards. You turn one over, then the bottom card turns itself over, and then you show that all the cards have turned themselves face down. And then you turn one face up, and the bottom card turns face up, and then they all turn face up. You do it a third time. So the audience are convinced they've seen the faces and backs of all 4 Jack of Diamonds or whatever card you're using. And then you vanish one of the cards and it comes back face up. Then they all turn face up again. And then you reveal that the backs of every card are now multicolored, sort of holographic coloring on the back. It's just like really bright. And the thing I like about it is it's so bright and vivid, that holographic material that they use for the cards, that it's almost like, how did you hide that? It's almost like you're trying to hide a flashing light. And people always grab the cards whenever I do it and I play. They always want to look and see how did that card change, and they're sort of feeling it. It's just got a beauty about it. And I remember the first time I saw this, it's a lovely thing. I was at Alan Allen's magic spot. Alan Allen sort of was responsible for getting me into magic. I studied at Central School of Art and Design, which is now called Central St. Martin's because it teamed up with St. Martin's College of Art. But Central School of Art used to be, it still is, on the corner of sort of Holborn, just up from the tube station on Southampton Row. And that was just literally a few hundred yards away from where Alan Allen's magic spot used to be. And I had a vague interest in magic. I didn't do any tricks really apart from a coin vanish, but I liked magic and I liked practical jokes. And I started going to Alan's magic spot a few times a week, really, because it was across the road from Art College. I wouldn't have any lectures. I'd be bored with learning how to be a product designer. So I used to go there, and Alan, for those who knew him, he was crazy, but he was lovely as well. He was very generous in his sharing of ideas and thoughts and performance tips. And as I got to know him, he would, quite often he would throw everybody else out and lock the door, and you'd just be there for 2 hours, him talking about one particular trick and going through all the psychology and nuances of it. And, I loved it there, and I went there all the time, really. And eventually I went from buying practical jokes to, I think he sold me a Con Unique, and then he sold me a Svengali deck, and then he started selling me a few books, and more books and more books. I think I spent all of my student grant, which is that's an enigma now. When you talk about a student grant, you have to get a loan, don't you? But we actually got given money in those days to go and study. I spent most of my student grant on magic tricks and books. Got a terrible degree, but got well educated in magic. But I was there one day. I think it was probably a Saturday, which was unusual because I was at college then. And while I was there, an American magician, I wish I knew who he was. I don't know who this guy was, but he was American for sure. And he came in and was chatting to Alan, and he got chatting to me. And I would be, maybe I would have been about 21, 22 then. I don't know how old this guy was. He was probably in his 40s. And he said, have you ever been to Davenport's? And of course, I wasn't into magic. I didn't really know anything about magic. I said, no, what's that? He said, oh, it's another magic shop. And I went, wow, London's got another magic shop. He said, yeah. He said, it's down by Charing Cross Tube Station. He said, I'm going there now. Do you want to come? And I said, yeah, all right. Probably a bit strange, just a random bloke asking me to go out on a date with him. But, it was magic. And I said, yeah, all right. So we got on a tube together. This guy, I wish I knew his name. I'd love to have been able to get back in touch with him. And we went to Davenport. So we went in and he started showing. He started getting the guy. It was this Scottish guy. I think he might be called Fergus, who used to work there. And all the Scottish guys died now, sadly. He had a bit of a stutter. I remember that. And lovely fella. And he sort of said to him, oh, have you got the first copy of the Jigs magazine? And he went, yeah. And he went and got it. He went, great. He said, you should get this. And it was just like, yellowed, faded, old 1950s Jigs magazine, issue number 1. He said, you should get this. There's a great trick in there called Dr. Jack's Faux Blacks. He said, you love it. He said, you should get that. I went, all right. I'm thinking I'm a student. I can't afford to buy all this stuff. And then he said, oh, show him Rainbow Cascade. So Fergus went and got a Rainbow Cascade, took it out of the little plastic bag and performed it for me. And I went, wow, that's great. He said, you should get that. And I remember this guy, Fergus, sort of saying, well, it's got a few moves in it. It's not easy. And he could tell that I wasn't really a magician. And this American guy said, no, he showed me some stuff at Alan Allen's Magic Spot. He can do it. He'll be able to work it out. So that came down. And anyway, a few other things. And there was about 7 or 8 items that he sort of said, you should get this. And then I went, oh, great, I'll have all of that. I went to pay. He said, no, I'm getting them all for you. And this guy bought Rainbow Cascade for me. He bought the first issue of Jinx. I can't remember what else, to be honest. The other things have just got out of my memory, obviously weren't that important to me. And he paid for it all. And I said, thanks very much. I thought, I'm going to have to sleep with him now. Something's going on. And it wasn't. He sort of went outside and got to the tube station. He went, great. He said, have fun with them. I hope it all works out for you. I said, thanks very much. And he disappeared. And I really regret not, it wasn't the days of mobile phones and emails and all of that and social media. It was, you sort of had to get somebody's name and address really if you wanted to keep in touch. And we never did that. And hopefully maybe there's a slim chance. Well, if he's still alive, bless him, maybe he'd hear this and say, hey, that was me. But so that's the story of how I ended up doing Rainbow Cascade. And I remember getting back and going, oh, it's got, and you have to learn a thing called an Elmsley count. Where do I learn that? And it had a brief description, but I remember, sat maybe for a week just practicing that thing. And then years later realizing, oh, you can do it. You can do it this way. You don't have to do it at your fingertips. You can do it in a deeper grip and, just finessing that. The one count, which is all you really need for that trick, is at Elmsley and 5 cards. Yeah, I love it.
I'm so glad that you mentioned Davenport's in that story because we've spoken about Rainbow Cascade on the podcast before.
All right, okay.
And it does seem to be UK magicians of a certain time were all shown Rainbow Cascade in Davenport's, and everyone bought it because it was such a falling piece of magic. And it used to be, you used to have Rainbow Cascade, you used to have the coin through rubber with the glass. They always used to show that as well. Used to be the same 3 or 4 tricks, but everyone used to come out with them because they were all bangers. They were such good tricks.
Yeah, it's a classic. It really is. And there's lots of other nice packet tricks, but there's something about that one. And I always used to get them out and say, I have a favourite card, and whatever it happened to be, whatever 4 cards I was given, because you never knew which card it was going to be that they sent you when you ordered them. And I used to order 3 or 4 at a time, just like several sets. And I used to say, it'd be all right, the Jack of Spades is my favourite card. I'll tell you what, it's an acrobatic card. I know that sounds strange. It's the only one that can do this. And then I go into the routine. But yeah, just lovely, lovely, lovely trick.
And if anyone does happen to know who that person was, maybe someone who was in the shop, or anyone, please do get in contact with John, because it would be amazing to have that full circle moment and find out who he was.
Yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, he was obviously a big Magic fan, American. I don't know why he was so over here. I actually, a similar thing happened, exactly the same. Once I was in Alan Allen's magic shop, and Bob Little came in. I didn't know who he was. And Bob Little was obviously doing some magic convention nearby. And he got chatting to me, and similar thing happened. He sort of, not quite the same. I mean, he got money out of me, but he said, I'm doing a magic convention. I didn't know about magic conventions either. I wasn't going to one. I wasn't going to it. And he went, I'm just staying around the corner. And he said, I've got all my stuff, that in my suitcase, if you want to come and see if there's anything you want. And again, I went to his hotel room, and he opened the suitcase, and I remember buying a few books off him, and then never saw him. But he was so crazy that years later, when I was at a magic convention, I realised, right, that's Bob Little. Yeah, that's who took me to his hotel and sold me some books. Yeah.
So you have a tendency to meet strange men at magic shops?
I have a tendency, straight as I am, men, even straight men, are attracted to me.
Well, that brings us very swiftly on to number 3. So what did you put in your third spot?
Number 3. Now, I suppose now would be a good time to let you out of your suspense. You asked about Blank Knight, and it's not on my list. I do love Blank Knight, but I'm sick to death of it. I don't want to take it on a desert island with me. I have to perform it everywhere I go. But this next one is, we're now moving away from close-up. This is the only trick that is in my repertoire. Sorry, well, no, we're not. No, I'm jumping ahead of myself. But we can go there now, and I will come back to another one which could be done close-up. We'll go now to the only trick that is in my repertoire, which is the tossed-out deck by David Hoy. And I've done this professionally for over 30 years, I would guess. I first saw it lectured by at a convention, the Fellowship of Christian Magicians Convention, which is an odd idea for anybody to get their heads around. Magicians are weird enough, and then Christian magicians, wow, you're really struggling, aren't you? But I was there, and a guy lectured the toss deck, and I'd never seen it before, and for me it seemed like real mind reading. The only thing I didn't like about it was the switch, which happened with the decker switch, and that was the only thing that I was really keen to change and solidify, and I eventually came up with a switch that is actually on my first DVD. It's on Educated Archer, but it's such a clean effect, and lots of people have changed it and done things with it. Some of them, I think, have changed it for the worse. Some have changed it for the better. But Luke Chimay has some great work on the tossed out deck, and really, takes it to a different level. I've never played with Luke's ideas, mainly because of that reason I said earlier on, of just, I like simplicity, and I like a bit of clarity, and I don't really want to muddy things up with extra stuff. So I use the sort of standard version of, you get a deck of cards, you throw it into the audience, you wrap bands around it. I do love rubber bands. I buy a lot of them. You wrap rubber bands around the deck, you throw it into the audience. 3 people peek at a card. throw the deck back to you. You don't look at the deck again, and you tell the three people what three cards they are thinking of, either individually or as a group. I do it as a group. I like that one moment of people sitting down. Some people do it and get each person to sit down separately. The thing that makes this trick really good is a trick that some people have removed from it. And I think a lot of people don't realize why it's such a good trick. It's a great trick for a few reasons. First of all, you've got instant audience involvement, which is why I think it's a great opener. I quite often either open with it, or it'll be the second trick. I might do balloon swallow, and then I might do toss deck, but quite often it's the first trick I do. And you've got the whole audience are involved. They're thinking, am I going to get the deck of cards or not? And what's lovely about it is, and there's a clue in the title, you are throwing that deck of cards into the audience, and the audience are throwing that deck of cards around. So there's no idea who's going to catch it, where it's going to go, whether it's going to be you. The audience are physically involved in making the trick work, not just the method, but the process. They are involved in the process. And there's quite a few people who've come up with versions of the toss deck where you hand it out on a net, on a long net. I'm not knocking people who come up with this. If it works for them, fine. Or they've walked out and they've asked three people to, choose a card, flick through, just think of one and then go to somebody else. And I think you lose the real joy and excitement of what the toss deck is all about when you start pulling back on that craziness. When you remove that excitement and physical energy that is involved with a deck of cards being thrown and landing on the floor and, trying to avoid, all the things that you have to explain. Don't hit anybody, throw it gently, throw underarm, don't, get careful, make eye contact with the person you're going to throw it to. There's all this sort of energy of, something slightly dangerous is going on, but you're trying to control it and the audience are trying to control it. And that's one of the beautiful things about the tossed out deck is that you've got that almost like a bit of a party atmosphere really early on in your show. And that's why I like it. And also, it's just impossible. Three people just think of any card in a deck out of your hands, and you tell them what it is. That's as strong as it gets, really, I think.
I think a lot of the time with routines like toss out deck, because I would suspect it's probably one of the early truly commercial dual reality routines that existed. And I think that because magicians have that sort of fear with that methodology, they try and improve what doesn't really need to be improved, because we live in a different reality ourselves and we think about things differently and we overanalyze things, when sometimes the method is awesome. It doesn't need changing. It just works.
Yeah. And also, to do it, you have to have a lot of audience management, because you've got to manage the way they handle that deck of cards. You've got to manage the way that they look at a card. That you've got to manage which corner they prise the deck open. You've got to manage how they throw it to somebody else, how they catch the cards, who they throw them to. If you're doing cabaret and you've got tables and glasses and bottles, you've got to manage, that they throw it to, to the person, and not that you're not going to get anything thrown. You've got to make sure that people are aware that a deck's, going to be flying through the air, might hit them on the head. There's just so much. And I think some magicians try and simplify that process rather than saying, you know what, I'm going to tackle it and I'm going to handle all of those issues. And I handle that. There's a lot of process. There's a lot of explaining to do to manage all of those things. And I always try and make process interesting or fun. I have a little acronym, actually. I'm going slightly off piste here, but I mean, who wants to be on piste? all the time. It's uncomfortable. But I have a little acronym which is FIRE. And I always think everything I do in my show, and especially the process, should be either funny, interesting, relevant, or entertaining. So if I've got to have a deck examined and ask them to make sure that all the cards are different, I will try and make that process of asking them to check the cards funny or interesting. It's certainly relevant because they have to, confirm that the deck is regular so that the trick seems strong and people realize, and entertaining. And most of the time, I'll try and make it more than one of those, more than just relevant, because a lot of the time the process is relevant. Things have to be checked, things have to be explained, but just relevant on its own isn't often enough. So all of the process involved in that toss deck, explaining how it's going to be thrown out, there'll be a gag about why I want them to throw it underarm. There'll be a gag about the guy checking the cards and making sure that they're all different. There'll be a gag about why I'm putting the rubber bands on. There's gags on all of the things, even though I need to explain, make eye contact with a person. All of these things, they have to be said, but I will then also try and make them funny, interesting, relevant, or entertaining. Keep it on fire, so to speak. And I think that's why sometimes people shy away. And the other thing is sometimes there's a lot of pressure on magicians and creators to constantly keep reinventing classics, when a classic is a classic because everything's been thought of and ironed out. And sometimes people reinvent it as a worse version of it without realizing it. They think it's an improvement, but it's actually, it takes something away from the joy of the original.
Yep, I think that's amazing. And your FIRE acronym, 100%. And we see that through all of your work. Even thinking back to your DVDs now that you've just mentioned that, there are moments all the way through your performances when you're explaining what something is. Even back to Soundbox, when you're handing the keys out and you're explaining stuff, there are always quips all the way through that and jokes all the way through the explanation of what's going to happen.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be funny, because obviously not everybody's a comedy magician. So for me, funny is one of the the thing I'll go to the most. But if you're not a comedy magician, you can still make that process interesting, and you can still make it entertaining, and something that genuinely entertains the audience, generally interests the audience, and also it's relevant. Sometimes if it's not relevant, then don't say it, don't do it. If there's something that actually doesn't help the trick in any way, shape, or form, then take it out. Just think, why am I saying that? Why am I saying I've got a regular deck of cards here, when really it doesn't matter, because the audience is going to look at them and shuffle them in a moment anyway. There's lots of things that we do and say that aren't relevant. It's a real challenge to sit and watch a video of yourself performing a routine, and actually everything you say, do I need to say that? Do I actually need to say that? Do I need to say that? Do I need to say that? And if you do need to say that, why? How can I say it so that it's on fire? So yeah. It's something I always try and think about, and I'm always aware when I'm working on new routines. I'm always aware that this is nowhere near funny enough yet. It's nowhere near, it hasn't got all the points covered. There's lots of stuff where it's just me doing process, and I haven't applied that fire yet, and it doesn't happen overnight. I'm slowly just peeling things away and adding things, and new routines take me about a year before I think I'm happy with it now. I'm just working on a new thing, which is just a 5-card selection, 5 cards chosen behind my back, and I name the 5 cards, and the premise is that I am going to distract myself, and by distract myself, the thoughts will come. A little bit like when you can't remember somebody's name, you think about something else, and suddenly the name comes to you. And I distract myself by reciting, and this is a random thing, but I recite all of the American presidents from George Washington to present day. And as I'm doing that, the cards come to me bit by bit. Oh, you've got a red card, blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's a picture. A few more presidents. Oh, yeah, King of Diamonds or whatever. And I go through, and hopefully I get all of the cards correct before I get to Donald Trump. And at the moment, I've performed that routine, let me see, 1, 2, 3, maybe, I think 4 times so far. It's nowhere near funny enough. I've got gags about some of the presidents. It's nowhere near tight enough. The reason that I'm explaining to the spectator why I'm doing it is not clear enough. There's loads not right with it at the moment, but in a year's time, hopefully, fingers crossed, just trust in the process, in a year's time of constantly doing it and constantly adding and taking away and tweaking and listening to people, I always ask for feedback from people I trust, and ask people to write lines. I've got friends who come up with lines, throw lines at me. Eventually, it comes out to a routine that looks like I've been doing it forever like that. That's how the toss deck. The first time I did the toss deck, it was probably very descriptive and, very few lines in it, very few funny things, really.
Well, that was our first foray into stand-up and parlour. So we're going to see where this is going to go now with number 4. So what was in your 4th spot? That
toss deck is the only thing in my working repertoire. We'll jump back. I've slightly got out of order, but I just missed one out. And I said this as a close-up. It can be both, and it is a trick I have done. I always have it in my case, as in case something goes wrong in an emergency. I need it. It's not something I do very often. I used to do it years ago, and I've done it close-up, and that is the invisible deck. Another sort of classic, I think Joe Berg, was it Joe Berg? And I think it was the Ultramental deck. I could be wrong on that. I know some people prefer the brainwave. Obviously, with the brainwave of the invisible deck are very similar. One card is reversed in the deck. With the brainwave, you've got the kicker of showing that it's a different coloured back to all the other cards. I prefer invisible because mainly I perform it when I do perform it on stage, and I can hold the cards to the audience. They can see that all the cards are different and it's a regular deck, and then I can separate one that's reversed, and I can see it obviously from my side and take it out and show this their card. I can understand why some people like the kicker, but the kicker, for me, almost slightly confuses the trick, because you haven't really taken the card out and reversed it. You've taken the card from another deck and reversed it in your deck, which for me is just slightly more confusing. I know it's not confusing, but I like the simplicity of being able to say, I've got a deck of cards here, and before we even started, I took one of the cards and I reversed it in the deck, one card. And I think you as an audience are going to try and work it out. And I quite often will get the audience to choose the card in pieces. Somebody chooses a colour, somebody chooses a suit, somebody chooses a picture or a number, and then somebody chooses the final value of the card. And I just like the clarity of one card's reversed, and there it is. And and as soon as it's a different coloured card, for me, it just slightly confuses the issue. And it is just, for me, there's nothing wrong with brainwave. There's nothing wrong with people who want to do brainwave. That's fine. I'm a big believer in you must You must believe in the trick that you're doing yourself 100%. You must be happy with it. If you're not happy with something about it, that will show. Subliminally, it will show. If you're not happy with the psychology of it or the method, if you're not happy with the premise that you're giving them, the story that you're telling them, whether it's a real story, whether it's a crazy, ridiculous, unbelievable story, but it's comedic and you just want to tell them the story anyway. If you're not fully bought into the effect and why you're doing it and why you believe in it, then that'll slightly reflect in somewhere. You've got to believe in it yourself. And I am wedded to the invisible deck rather than to the brainwave deck. And that's sort of why I do it. I just like the simplicity and the clarity of it. It's impossible. It's so clean. It's a beautiful effect. Everybody does it, which is the only annoying thing, that everybody does it, but understandably so.
And I know that you mentioned that you can do it close up and stage. I know Tom Peterson has a wonderful presentation using an invisible deck on one of his projects as well. So do you normally perform it close up or stage?
I used to perform it close up. I haven't done close up for, like I say, 15, 20 years now. And even when I was doing close up, it wasn't something I did a lot. And the main reason it wasn't something I did a lot was because I didn't like, producing different decks of cards. I mean, I could perfectly get away with it, putting the deck away, then taking it back out again and switching it, so long as it was the same coloured back, which of course wasn't a problem. Then you could do it. But really, it was staged that I did it, or I have done it the most. And I say I don't do it a lot. It's sort of a little bit of a backup thing in my case. The reason I don't do it a lot is because everybody does it. And I don't really want to do things that people are doing a lot. I mean, toss deck is really popular. It went through a phase, 15, 20 years ago when everybody was doing toss deck. It's less popular now. I think people have moved on and mentalism's changed a little bit. A lot of mentalism's gone sort of dress in black and it's all propless and electronic, and people don't believe in just a simple deck of cards anymore. So I don't think as many people are doing toss deck as they used to. But I do still do that. But invisible deck, I don't do so much because it feels like it's out there too much with everybody doing it.
Well, it's another great choice and leads us very nicely onto a number 5. So what was in your 5th spot?
Well, the next 4 effects are tricks that I've never, ever performed, and I will never, ever perform unless I am on a desert island, and it won't matter. And the reason for the next 4 tricks are, I love the effects, but I've seen somebody else do them. And the person I've seen do them so well that I would never do it. And I'm a bit like that. If I see a trick done so well that I think I couldn't better that, then I don't want to do it. I sort of, not for any other reason than I don't think I'd ever be able to do it as well as them, and I wouldn't be satisfied. Quite often I'll see tricks and I like the trick and I think I could put my spin on that and make that my own. But the next 4 are all tricks that somebody has done and they've made it their own, and I love it and I'd love to do it, but I know I'd never be happy if I did it. And the first one is Andy Nyman's Sophie trick. I saw Andy Nyman do this. I think we were on the same bill. I can't remember where it was. I've seen him do it several times. The first time I saw it, I watched it from the wings. It's basically a find the lady. I think Anneman used to do a find the lady type trick. But Andy has made this his own. And I think I know the method. I'm not sure. I could be totally wrong. I don't care. And it's a beautiful little trick where Andy talks about his wife, and he has a photograph of it, and he puts it in an envelope with some other envelopes. And basically, without looking, he has his back turned, a spectator mixes these cards up, and there's several phases, and each time Andy knows where the envelope with the photograph of his wife is. And the spectator chooses which envelope to put them in and how to mix them up. And, none of this is seen by Andy. And it has a beautiful line in it of, take your hand off my wife as a reveal. I just love, that sort of, that line, sort of, take my wife's name out of your mouth. But a much gentler version of that. When the spectator puts the hand on the envelope that's actually got Sophie's photograph in it. But it's just got some lovely faces, but it's perfectly motivated for the performer. It's a trick that is perfect for Andy. I can't remember all of the lines and explanation, but it was just beautiful. Not full of gags. He's not John Archer. He's Andy Nyman, and he's got gags where they're needed. But I watched that. I just thought, oh, what a lovely, lovely performance. A lovely piece. I'd never do it. If Andy came and gave me all the props and said, "There you go, John, do it and make it about your wife," I'd go, oh, thanks, Andy, but I could never present it. I'm John Archer. I'm comedy shtick, and it's got a gravitas that he had with it. That it all made sense. It made sense that he was doing that and why he was doing that and why he was demonstrating that he could do that. It's a beautiful thing. And if I'm ever on a desert island, I'll have a photograph of Andy's wife in an envelope.
I mean, as long as Andy doesn't hear this, then yep, that'll be absolutely fine. Yeah,
Andy won't listen to this.
I know that this is one of Pete's favourite tricks as well.
Has Pete done this podcast?
He has, yeah. He was one of the
I haven't listened to that one yet. I'll have to dig back and find it. I've listened to a lot, but I haven't listened to them all yet, so I'll have to go and find that one.
Well, spoiler alert, this isn't in his top 8. But
okay.
It is one of his favourite tricks, and I do remember him showing it to me in his living room years ago and being fooled by it, and it was funny. And then I saw Andy's version of it, which was so well put together. It was so funny. It was so different. I think you're on the money. I do think that there are certain routines that they are just that performers. No one is going to be able to do it like that person. It's perfectly written for Andy, by Andy, really.
Yeah, definitely. And a beautiful piece. And unfortunately, I mean, he's not doing, he doesn't do magic performances now, really. But yeah, I'd love to, if I was doing a little cabaret show and I could choose who was on it, he'd be straight in there with Andy, can you do the Sophie trick, please?
So what's in your 6th spot, John?
6th spot is Harry Blackstone Jr.'s floating light bulb. My first IBM convention, it was the IBM 50th convention in Southport. It's the only convention my wife's been to with me. And I remember she said afterwards, I don't think I need to go to any more magic conventions. They all seem to do the same thing. She said, they all produce doves and cards. I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore. I don't think it was even the case then. It was just obviously an observation she made. But on the bill was Harry Blackstone Jr. I think he'd come over to perform, well, for the IBM, but also I think Paul Daniels was filming him as a guest on his show doing the floating light bulb. And he performed the floating light bulb in the gala show there. I'm guessing it's maybe 40 years ago now, 35, 40 years ago. Can't remember exactly. And it's just, again, a simple Beautiful trick, clear, easy to understand. His wife walks out with a little standard lamp with a lampshade. It's got a bulb glowing slightly green, I seem to remember. He takes it out of the stand. It's a little bit hot. He has to suck his finger, part of the method, I believe. And then he has a little hoop over his neck. And he says, I'm going to show you something you will remember for the rest of your lives. And that's another wonderful line. And it's a very brave line, because to say that as a magician, I'm not sure if I could say that about any tricks in my act. You will remember this for the rest of your life. I don't think I could say that. But with this trick, you do. And I remembered it. My wife, whenever I bring the subject up, she remembers it. And he walks into the audience with this light bulb still glowing, which then 35, 40 years ago was more magical than it is now. Now it's just like, yeah, you know, electronics is such that you could have a light bulb that's lit on its own. But then it was still a bit hard to understand. Batteries weren't small. Everything was, black and white. I'm going back a long time. And he'd walk into the audience and he'd give the light bulb to somebody and say, have a look at it. And they would look at the light bulb. They could examine it. And he would take it off them and just hold it in front of them. And he would leave go of it. And it would float right in front of that spectator in the third or fourth row. And he would take the hoop off his neck and he would put it over the thing. He would spin it around, put it back on his neck. Then he'd take the bulb and he went to somebody else. He'd take it to 3 people, each person giving them the light bulb, check it out, make sure there's nothing attached to it. He would then take it off them. He'd literally just take it off them, hold it just above the head, a little line, don't touch, whatever. 3 times. Then he'd walk back onto the stage and he would pause and he'd look and say, what's that? To somebody a little bit further out. What, you didn't see it? Well, I will let you see it, but don't touch, just watch. And he would leave go of the light bulb, it would float in front of him, and then it would float away from him, off the stage, over the heads of the audience. I remember this, and I'm not sure whether I'm just remembering this and it never really happened, but it's how it happened in my head. It would float out across the audience, then it would float sideways across the audience, and then back to him. And it would float through the hoop and he would grab it. And of course the house lights would dim slightly so you could see the light bulb. And it was unbelievable. I mean, at the time, I think I knew the method. I didn't know the exact method, but I think I know how he's doing this. I wasn't exactly sure how he was doing it. Even now, I'm not exactly sure, although I think I'm clearer now than I was 35, 40 years ago. But even so, it was hairs on the back of your neck thing. I've seen it done since. Hans Klock did it, and he did it very, very well, but it just didn't touch me in the same way that seeing Harry Blackstone do it that time. Harry Blackstone Jr. had that wonderful, deep voice. He sounded like a magician. He looked like a magician. He behaved like a magician. Just superb, beautiful stuff. Like I say, I would love to do the floating light bulb, but I know, having seen other people do it, and I know myself, I could never do it and get the same reaction that Harry Blackstone did. And so for that reason, as the Dragons would say, I'm out.
I feel like there are certain routines that all of us wish we could go back and see for the first time. I feel like things like, Pepper's Ghost would have been phenomenal to be in a theatre for the first time that was shown. And for me, this was one of those routines that I always wished I had the opportunity to be in the theatre. I've seen so many videos of this happening, and that moment where he sends it out over the audience's head. I can just imagine that moment in the theatre everyone would have been in awe. I can't imagine that
audible gasps. Audible gasps when it happens. Yeah. Phenomenal. And you're right when you say about seeing something for the first time, especially as a magician. If we see something that either fools us or just enchants us with the performance, it's never ever the same the second and third time we see it. I was recently at Blackpool, and I went to see the one, the competition. And Simon Coronel did his ring to Lincoln playing cards. Beautiful piece. And I saw him do it at FISM 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was, 3 years ago, I think. The first time I saw that, I was like a layman again. I just could not understand how he'd done what he'd done. Got a borrowed ring linked to a playing card that he then could hand out and let them keep as a souvenir. Sadly, magicians talk, and we all sit and analyze everything. And I later discovered the method. And then I watched it again at Blackpool, and he did it equally as well, equally as possibly better performance. Really, I mean, he thought he thought about it as a stage piece, but it didn't have quite the same effect on me as that very first time. And that's not his fault. It's just it's just sad that, especially for magicians, that once we've seen something and explored it and looked at it, it's sort of we lose that magic, that magic of wow, I got fooled and it's been so long, because we don't get fooled very often as magicians. Sadly, it's lovely when we do.
Hello guys, I'm here to talk to you about Alakazam Unlimited. This is the best streaming platform in the world, I'm telling you now. With Alakazam Unlimited, you get access to over 150 magic routines. This is video performances and explanations. We have card magic, coin magic, kids magic, rope magic, mentalism, stage, parlor, impromptu. We've got you covered. All of this for the low price of just £4.99 a month. And you can cancel at any time. Perfect if you've got commitment issues. Yes, I'm talking to you. Guys, you are going to absolutely love it. If you haven't joined the platform already, what the heck are you doing? Alakazam Unlimited is a streaming platform that you need to be a part of. Not only that, there is also exclusive content only available on the platform. Check it out now, alakazam.co.uk. Cheers.
Yeah. Well, that's another great one and brings us nicely into the tail end of your 8. So what's in number 7?
Number 7, another classic trick that I would love to do, but I never will, because I'll never be able to do it as well as Bob Reed, and that is his knife through coat. I didn't know Bob Reed very, very well. I got to know him at the Magic Circle centenary celebrations, and we hit it off like a house on fire. I remember him saying to me, why have I not met you before? Why didn't I know who you were? He did a talk. He did a tour. He used to do he didn't do it very often. He did a tour of historical magical places in London. It was a walking tour, and he did one at the end of the Magical Circle centenary. He produced a little map, and I think the plan was that he was going to run these magical walks around London. Sadly, he died, I think later that year or the year after. So I never really got a chance to hang out with him and get to know him as much as I would have liked to. But he was a lovely, lovely fella. But his knife through coat routine was a masterclass in comedy and audience control, spectator control. He'd borrow a coat, he'd put a knife through it, in the way many people have done. But he had gags for every phase. He even had gags for, sharpening the knife. He had 2 sort of saucepan lids that you get somebody to grind together as though it was an old grinding wheel. I mean, you do that gag now, and I think a lot of people wouldn't really know what the reference was, but people knew about sharpening on knives on a wheel, I suppose, when he first started doing it. And he'd hold the knife as though he was sharpening it while they ground these two paddlets together, and he'd have a little funkin' ring in his hand, and sparks would fly off the knife as he sharpened it. And then as the knife went through the coat, he'd sort of get halfway through and he'd see a bit of lining, and he'd got lining material that looked like, and he'd start pulling this lining as though it was the lining of the inside of their jacket, and there would be a ripping sound as he pulled it off, and then bits of loose lining hanging around, and he'd get a bulldog clip, and he'd clip all these bits of lining together with a bulldog clip, and sort of say that'll be fine. And the knife had come out, and now they've got this coat with a big bulldog clip with all ripped lining, and he'd say you can put that on, and he'd take the bulldog clip off and brush it down, and it was healed. There was nothing there, and they put the coat back on. Just laughs after laughs after laughs. Every single moment thought about, everything justified. I see some knife through coats, and it's just, look, I've got a knife and it's gone through your coat, it's come out the other side, and look, it's not harmed. I just could not get any more out of that routine than Bob did. Just beautiful. But if I was on a desert island, I would have a knife, I'd have 2 pan lids, a funkin' ring, and I'd be doing it every day of the week. Yeah, I've avoided it just because Bob Reed's was so good, and it's I think probably the first person I saw doing knife through coat as well, and that goes back to what we said earlier, that the first time you see something, that sticks with you, that thought and those memories.
Well, that's a great choice and leads us to number 8. So what was in your final position?
Number 8 is aerial fishing. 2 people who I've seen do it, Alan Shaxson and Mac King. Mac King, probably my favourite performance of it, just because I'm a comedy magician and Mac's a comedy magician, and I like to think of him as a friend, and I love everything that he does. But there's something about producing live animals, and I know it's not really popular now, and rightly so, I suppose. It's probably another reason why I would never do it. I don't think I'd want to work with animals, not because I think the goldfish particularly are in any great massive distress. I'm not a goldfish, so you'd have to speak to their union about that. But the reason I wouldn't do it is, like I say, because Mac does it so well. But the idea of producing goldfish from thin air, when goldfish live in water, for goodness sake, that's their home, and you produce one alive and drop it into a little wine glass, from a fishing rod. It's so motivated. If you were going to catch real imaginary fish, if real imaginary fish is a possible description, but to be able to, catch them, what other way to catch them than that, by catching them with a fishing rod in a theatre. And Mac, using a little bit of, I think he uses Fig Newton, doesn't he, as his bait. And then, you see it, the fish dangling on the hook, and you take it off, and yeah, it's a real fish. Oh, I'd love to have seen the early performances of that by whoever it was. Was it Qingling Su? I think it was one of the fake Chinese magicians. Again, something else you would never do now. But yeah, aerial fishing. I just think it's a really, really nice premise for a trick, and truly magical.
I remember seeing Mac do this. He was the first person that I saw perform it. But I think it's the absurdity of the routine that really makes it feel more magical. It's the whole lower their expectations, and then that makes that final moment more impactful. Yeah. The fact that he has this silly fishing rod, and then he catches this fish, which is a funny moment, but your expectations are lowered because it looks like, he's made it at home the night before, if we're all honest. Yeah. And then
also your expectations are lowered a little bit because it's Mac King and he's doing comedy. So you don't expect, he does some crazily strong magic, but that is one of the big advantages of doing comedy and magic is that it's a bigger leap when you do something clever. I call it the Tommy Cooper effect. I think Tommy Cooper never really succeeded at anything. And when suddenly he did something right, the reaction he got from the audience was way bigger than if anybody else had done it. I remember vividly him doing the 4 eggs balanced on the tubes on the tray, and he'd whack the tray and the eggs would fall in. And the audience would go wild because it's like, you're Tommy Cooper, you're hopeless, you can't do that. And then he does. It's almost like seeing a 3-year-old kid suddenly juggle. You go, how have you done that? You're 3. And so if you're a comedy magician, you do have that distinct advantage that when something really clever happens, you get a little bit more credit for it than somebody who's a straight magician might be. And Max got that wonderful line as well where he goes, "Let's go fishing," classic lines, a bit like Harry Blackstone's line, "You're going to see something now you'll remember for the rest of your life." It's a line that works so well, and "let's go fishing" is a line that works so well for him. Yeah, beautiful stuff.
Well, that's a great list. We've gone from Crazy Man's Handcuffs, Rainbow Cascade, Tossed Out Deck, Invisible Deck, Sophie Trick, Floating Light Bulb, Knife Through Coat, and Aerial Fishing. What a great list. And I really like that you've just put things in there that you just love and that you wouldn't necessarily perform. Yeah,
I mean, I love all the stuff I perform, but the stuff I perform for the audience, it's for them to love. I enjoy all of my stuff. I enjoy doing all of my stuff, but my love of magic is I love watching magic. So I don't like watching myself. I don't get turned on by thinking about the tricks that I do. Obviously I want them to be good, but I want them to be good for the audience. And as a magician myself, I get much more of a kick out of other things, And if I was going on a desert island, I wouldn't want to perform. I'd perform for people and there wouldn't be any people there. So if I was going to be on a desert island, I'd rather do all those things that I couldn't do or haven't let myself do. It's an odd little thought, but I just decided to go for it rather than sit and talk about myself for an hour or so, which I have done in a roundabout way, I suppose. But I wanted to talk about what excites me.
Well, this takes us to your 3 curveball items. Let's go in with the banishment. So you get to dig a big sandy hole and chuck something inside, something that you maybe don't agree with or that just annoys you. So what are you banishing onto your island?
I am banishing, and this will surprise nobody at all who knows me, because I'm very vocal about this. I am banning the vanishing bandana. I mean, this trick is actually, there are actually cruise ship directors who have said magicians can't do this trick because everybody does it. And it is, I just hate everything about it. For me, it is karaoke magic. It's, I could give this routine to my mother, who's 87, and she could stand up and do it, and she would get raucous laughter. She would get stunning applause, and everyone would think she was amazing. But really, all she's done is follow the instructions. Literally, I mean, you are doing what the trick says you're doing. Here's some instructions. Somebody else is doing the gags for you, and I mean, a bandana, for goodness sake. It's not even an English thing. And magicians just think, well, it doesn't matter because the trick's good. So I'll just, just hope that everybody, realizes it's a bit American because there's an American voice on the voiceover. They've created none of it. It's just lazy. And I speak to a lot of people. I don't get me wrong. I don't hate the people who do this. I know lots of people who do this trick and I love them a bit. Some of them are very close friends. This isn't about them. This is about the trick. And I've got friends who've, lots of them who do it, who've sort of said, yeah, but I've made it my own. I've made it my own. I've put my own bits in. I pull this face when I squeeze the banana. For those who don't know the trick, you confuse a banana with a bandana. You have instructions on a tape or a CD or on your phone, or it could be Siri. People upgrade it to try and improve it and modernize it. And eventually you vanish the crumbled up banana in the bandana. But it's meant to be the bandana that you folded up, not the banana, and you folded the banana. And it's hilarious. And the only good version, there is one, and that's when David Copperfield did it. David Copperfield did it on one of his specials, and he didn't use a bandana, he used a handbag, and he vanished it in a lady's handbag. He had gags about what was in the handbag. Everything was new and original, and it wasn't something that people were doing then as it is now. It wasn't, now it seems like every cruise ship entertainer is doing it. Every cabaret magician is doing it. And they think they've changed it, but really they're still just using an excuse to follow some instructions. And I don't know. I don't like it. And I'd quite happily bury it, but not the people who do it. I wouldn't bury them. They could sit and have a barbecue on the desert island with me, do the cabaret that I've invited them to, and then fly home.
Well, it feels a shame because there are no doubt going to be banana trees on your island. So you could have done many vanishing...
Eat the bananas, that's what I said.
Well, you were the first person to banish a trick. So that's...
Oh, am I?
That's interesting. You are the first.
And it is possible that somebody could do a version of Vanishing Bandana that I would watch and go, wow, that's taken it in a totally different direction. I've not seen that yet. I feel the same way. I'm not banishing this, but I feel the same way a little bit about the vent masks. Everybody seems to do the vent masks, even people who aren't vents now, because it doesn't really matter. And they all do the same thing. They all do the same. Oh, I want to sing a song now. Oh, I can dance. Can you dance? Oh, and they all do the high voice and the low voice, and they're all doing sort of the same thing, the same gags, the same lines, and it works. It gets great reactions and it gets great laughs. But I couldn't do it because I just wouldn't feel like it was me that was getting those laughs. I would feel like it was, I would feel like it was karaoke magic. I'm just singing somebody else's song and somebody else's tune, and I might not even be singing it quite as well as they sing it, but the song's so good and the tune's so good that people are going to react at the end and go, oh, that was good.
Well, I still think there's lots of really interesting reasons behind that. So you're allowed to banish it. It has been banished.
It feels good to get rid of it. Oh, I'm not even going to put a headstone on that. But I'm just going to brush the sand over so I can't find it again.
Well, at the very beginning, you did say that you have lots of books. So let's find out what you put in your book position.
It's funny you should say I have lots of books. There's some behind me. You probably can't. They're on a shelf. But you'll also notice there's a shelf now that doesn't have books on it. That one over there, because I sold about 300 books just before Christmas for various reasons. One was I needed space on my wall. Talk about that later. And the other reason was I didn't want to die and have my wife worrying about what these books were worth, because some of them were worth a lot of money. Also, I thought the money would be nice. I might as well have the money now rather than just have a load of books on my shelf that I've read lots of times and don't need anymore. But I did keep about 100, 150 books. I sold just under 300. And there's lots of them that I'd love to take on a desert island with me, but for purely sentimental reasons, I have chosen this book, which I'm showing you now. They can't see. Henry Hay, The Amateur Magician's Handbook. It was the first magic book I ever had. Before I was even a magician, funnily enough, before I went to art college, and I don't know where I don't know who bought me it, who gave me it. I have a feeling it was a second-hand copy. And the only thing I learned to do from it, it's a brilliant book. It's called The Amateur Magician's Handbook, but it's got everything. It's got cards, coins, billiard balls, mentalism, card magic. It's got even some illusion things at the end, the dollhouse illusion and sewing in half. It's a good treatise on general magic across the whole board. And I learned to do the French drop from it. And that's all I could do until I started art college in London and started visiting Alan Allen's magic shop. I'm presuming it was probably a relative that saw it in a junk shop or a bookshop or a magic shop, and thought, well, John's a bit of a joker entertainer, he might like that. And they got me it, and I sort of picked it up. Oh, that's interesting, what's this? And obviously looked through it and thought, oh, you can vanish a coin, and learnt that one thing. I then joined the police force, and I lent my Amateur Magician's Handbook to another policeman who had a bit of an interest in magic. He wasn't a great policeman. I think he got thrown out. And he certainly wasn't a great friend, because I never saw him again. I never saw the book again. And I had to go online several years later, quite a lot of years later. And because I was missing this book so much, I went online and I found a copy. I had to find a copy that was the same back. I wanted it to look the same because it's been produced in lots and lots of different versions. And I had to find this one, which is the sort of the black cover with the white writing on it. And you can still get them online on eBay. Various people sell them. I don't know whether there's a modern version that's been printed or whether it's completely out of print. But it's a great book. And, certainly if you were getting somebody a book who was interested in starting magic, Mark Wilson's course is great, and the Tarbell books are great. I've got the set of Tarbells, but I don't think you could go wrong with buying somebody the Amateur Magician's Handbook. It's a wonderful. I don't know much about Henry Hay. I should possibly delve in and find out a bit more about it.
When you rebought the book, all those years later, did you go back through it and find things that you picked up on and you started learning, but further on down the line?
Yeah, I did. I sort of picked it up. It'd been so long since I'd seen it, and it was like, being reunited with an old friend, and it felt great just to have it on the shelf again, because it was that first ever book. And I was really annoyed that I'd lent it to this guy. And I don't think this guy realised how important the book was to me. I don't know why I lent it out, really. I'm very careful who I lend books to now. But yeah, I did look through it, and I thought, oh, right, it's got some mentalism in there, and it's got some animal stuff in there, and it's, I still pick it up and flick through it now and again, because it explains some things very simply that other books take too long to explain. I can delve in there and go, oh yeah, that's how I could do that. But it's more there really, just it's a little comfort blanket now. I love being able to see it on my shelf, and if I was on a desert island, I'd want to have that there really, just to stare at.
Well, it's one that we've not had before, so if you don't have it, try and seek one out. I will definitely be seeking one out for my collection, but it does bring us to your item. So the final thing that you could pick, what is the non-magic item that you would take?
Well, this is easy, and I think anybody who knows me is going to be able to guess what this is. It's the reason I sold my books, is so I could put them on my wall. It's my ukulele. I have about 7 ukuleles. I have had more. I've given 3 or 4 away to people who I thought might benefit from having a ukulele in their life. A day rarely goes by when I don't play my ukulele. It's a wonderful, happy instrument, the ukulele. John Lennon, I was going to say George Harrison, but it was John Lennon said that if everybody in the world played the ukulele, there would be no wars. It's just hard to be angry or get upset with anything when you've got a ukulele in your hands. It's a silly, bright, happy instrument, and I use it in my act. I do silly songs with it, and I normally close with a song with it. But yeah, I've got several on the wall. I've got a few behind me, and when I'm in my office working on bits and bobs, writing or creating or just reading Facebook. I can spend a whole day in my office. Most days I'll spend just sat here. And you can guarantee that at some point I'll just lean over, I'll pull a ukulele off the wall and I'll play it for half an hour, and then it goes back and I'll carry on with life. I couldn't live without my ukulele. Well, I could. I'd survive, but I wouldn't be as happy.
Well, that's a wonderful list. We're going to go back over it. So we've got Crazy Man's Handcuffs, Rainbow Cascade, Tossed Out Deck, Invisible Deck, Sophie Trick, Floating Light Bulb, Knife Through Coat, Aerial Fishing, Your Banishment is the Vanishing Bandana, Your Book is the Amateur Magician's Handbook, and Your Item is the Ukulele. Very, very interesting list.
There's 100 tricks I could put in there that I think are great and people do well and stuff. Magic's fantastic. Blackpool, like I said, I was at Blackpool a while. I don't know when this is going to go out, but not that long ago, I was at Blackpool. Just the amount of great stuff I saw. It's just, if you love magic, then there's so much to enjoy, so much stuff you can see. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful life being a magician.
Absolutely. And if anyone wants to see you, John, where can they find out more about you, your products, your shows, everything?
Probably best to follow me either on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. I am the Archini, or they could follow me on Instagram, again, at the Archini. My website is www.john-archer.com. Most of the stuff I do is private stuff. I don't do a lot of like public shows, but now and again I do. If I'm doing a public show, I will normally, unless it's sold out, but I will normally let people know that I'm doing something, and where they can get tickets, I'll normally do that on my socials. I've got a Facebook fan page as well as my own page. If you don't know me, don't ask me to be a friend, because I think I've got about 1,500 people waiting in a queue, and some of them I know really well, and I just haven't spotted that they've asked and they've fallen down the list. So you're probably not going to get that. But certainly follow my little fan page, John Archer. You'll find it on Facebook. And I mention things on there too. So, And then, Alakazam, I've got my DVDs and sell my stuff. Vanishing Ink, sell my stuff. Lots of dealers have got it. I should maybe, in honour of this podcast, point people to Alakazam and just hope that Andy Gladwin and Josh aren't listening.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, John. It's been a joy to finally get you on here.
It's been great. I've actually enjoyed it. Nice to meet you too. Hopefully I'll see you soon at some convention or other.
Yes, well, yeah. I'm sure I'll be seeing you with a ukulele in your hand on stage at some point.
I'll have something in my hand on stage for sure.
And thank you all for listening. Of course, we'll be back again next week with another episode of Desert Island Tricks. And don't forget, we do have Stranded with a Stranger, which we've had a nice flurry of. So hopefully we've got them being a bit more consistent. So if you want to send in your list of 8 tricks, 1 banishment, 1 book, and 1 non-magic item that you use for magic to sales@alakazam.co.uk. Please include a little bio as well as the reasons for your tricks, and get them over to me, and I'll get one of these recorded for you. So with that being said, we hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you again next week on Desert Island Tricks. Goodbye.
When I perform at gigs, I look at effects that tick these 3 boxes. Is it super strong and powerful? Yes. Will it last with your spectators for a lifetime? Absolutely. And does it leave them with a souvenir that perfectly captures the moment of magic? If that all sounds exactly what you're after, look no further than the liquid forks. These forks have been custom designed to be able to bend right in front of your spectators' eyes. It's so easy to perform, it's so visual, and trust me, they will honestly keep this impossible object because they've seen it morph in front of their eyes. It literally does the impossible. Not only that, Liquid Forks comes with 50 of these forks in each pack, and it comes with the full Liquid Forks routine taught by the world famous David Penn. Not only that, we have a subscription service. If you guys love these forks and you get through them at your gigs, we now offer a monthly subscription where you get sent a box through every single month at a 10% reduced fee. Like I said, you guys are going to be loving these. You're going to be performing them every chance you can. Trust me, the reactions are second to none. So guys, head over to alakazam.co.uk, pick up a set of liquid forks. You will not regret it. Easy to do. Leaves them with a killer souvenir. And to be honest with you, it's not cards, it's not coins, it's not mentalism. It's something beyond belief. Check it out now, guys, the liquid forks.